Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 2,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
Vikings Nation, the countdown clock just got a whole lot louder, and trust us, you are going to want to hear every single word of what just dropped. We are officially inside the final stretch before training camp kicks off, and in true Minnesota fashion, this week did not go quietly. There's a forgotten legend getting his flowers. An offensive line quietly building something special behind the scenes. A superstar left tackle putting in mystery late-night workouts. A head coach trading his playbook for a golf club. And a hidden gem on the defensive line who somehow, some way, got completely snubbed by the entire league. Oh, and don't even get us started on the quarterback drama that just will not go away. This is the kind of week where if you blinked, you missed something huge. So sit back, because we're about to break down every single storyline bubbling up in Minnesota right now, and by the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly why this offseason has been anything but boring. The countdown begins, and one legend gets his due. Let's set the scene. As of this very moment, the Minnesota Vikings are just 22 days away from officially opening training camp. Mark your calendars, circle it, set a reminder, whatever you need to do, because Saturday, August 1st is the day this team reports back to TEO Performance Center and the real football finally begins again. And here's a fun little nugget to kick things off. With the number 22 suddenly front and center on everyone's mind because of the countdown, it's worth remembering that in the entire history of the Minnesota Vikings franchise, there has only ever been one player to wear that number. One. That honor belongs to David Palmer, a second-round pick back in 1994 out of Alabama, where he had already won a national championship under legendary coach Gene Stallings. Palmer spent 7 seasons in Minnesota, and while he did get a bit of run on offense, his real legacy was as an electric return specialist, the kind of player who could flip field position and change a game in the blink of an eye. Across his career, he racked up 3 total return touchdowns, 2 on punts and 1 on a kickoff, and he averaged an eye-popping 22.6 yards per kick return along with 9.9 yards per punt return. Old-school Vikings fans remember him as a genuine special teams catalyst on that unforgettable 1998 Vikings squad. So here's to David Palmer, the one and only number 22 in franchise history as we count down the days until this team hits the field once again. The offensive line might be a sleeping giant now. Let's talk about something that could quietly end up being one of the biggest storylines of the entire Vikings season, and it's happening in the trenches. According to Vikes Vantage, citing ESPN data, the Minnesota Vikings had 3 different offensive linemen rank inside the top 10 at their respective position in run-blocking win rate last season. 3. That is not a small deal, and honestly, it might be one of the most underrated storylines heading into this year. Let's start with Christian Darrisaw, who posted an absolutely absurd 84% run-blocking win rate, good for first among all tackles in the entire NFL. Read that again. First, and keep in mind, Darrisaw was playing through significant injury issues for a chunk of last season. If a hobbled, less than 100% version of Christian Darrisaw is still the single best run-blocking tackle in football, just imagine what a fully healthy version could look like this season. Then there's Donovan Jackson, and let's just say the hype is very real. He posted a 77% run-blocking win rate, good for 5th among all interior offensive linemen in the league. For a player who's still building his URSM, that is an outstanding number. And rounding out the trio is Brian O'Neill, who also fought through injury last season and still managed to finish 10th among all tackles in run-blocking win rate. 3 linemen, all producing elite or near-elite numbers in the run game, all while dealing with various levels of injury. That is the definition of a sleeping giant, and it raises a genuinely fascinating question heading into 2026. With an offensive line capable of physically dominating opposing defenses in the run game, shouldn't Minnesota be leaning into that identity even harder? There's a real case to be made that Kevin O'Connell and new run game influence Frank Smith need to fully commit to establishing the run behind this unit, especially with so much uncertainty still swirling at the quarterback position. If you've got hogs up front who can win in the trenches at an elite level even while banged up, you ride with them. Run the football. Let the offensive line be the identity of this team while everything else sorts itself out. Darrisaw's midnight grind. Speaking of that offensive line, let's talk about Christian Darrisaw for a second, because the man is clearly not waiting around for training camp to start putting in work. There's footage circulating of Darrisaw grinding through a workout at 10:30 at night on a Wednesday. Dark skies visible through the windows, putting in extra reps well after most people have called it a day. And look, this is exactly the kind of story Vikings fans want to see. Darrisaw is someone who clearly knows how to enjoy life away from the field too. If you follow him on social media, you know he's not exactly a monk. There are trips to Florida, nice dinners, good times. But the late-night gym sessions prove there's real balance there. Work hard, play hard, that's the mentality, and it's hard not to root for a guy putting in unglamorous, unnecessary extra work at 10:30 at night when absolutely nobody is forcing him to. The only thing Vikings fans want in return? Keep that knee right, Christian, stay healthy, and that dominant run-blocking number only gets scarier. Coach O'Connell trades the whiteboard for a golf club. Meanwhile, out at Lake Tahoe, Kevin O'Connell has been living an entirely different life this week, teeing it up at the American Century Championship, the annual Celebrity Pro-Am golf tournament that draws athletes, coaches, and celebrities from every corner of sports and entertainment. This marks O'Connell's first appearance at the event, and by all accounts, the man looks like he genuinely knows his way around a golf course. But here's the real question worth pondering. Do you actually want your head football coach to be really, really good at golf? On one hand, sure, being a skilled golfer suggests real discipline, focus, and the ability to stay calm under pressure. All qualities you'd want in the man calling the shots on Sundays. But on the other hand, becoming genuinely great at golf requires an enormous time investment, and there are only so many hours in a day. Does time spent perfecting a golf swing take away from time that could be spent perfecting a playbook? It's a legitimately fun debate, and one Vikings fans will probably keep having as O'Connell continues showing off his game at these celebrity events. And speaking of fun moments from Tahoe, there was a fan spotted in the crowd fully decked out in American flag gear, apparently refusing to let the 4th of July spirit die down even weeks later. One running joke floating around: could Carson Wentz somehow use that patriotic energy to sneak his way into a three-man quarterback battle alongside Kyler Murray and J.J. McCarthy? Probably not, but it's a fun thought. Kevin O'Connell opens up on the quarterback battle now. Let's get into the meat of it, because Kevin O'Connell sat down with Dan Patrick on the Dan Patrick Show this week. And he dropped some genuinely interesting comments about Minnesota's ongoing quarterback competition. When asked directly about the situation, O'Connell pointed back to the 2 seasons where the Vikings had one clear, unquestioned starter playing the entire season. In those 2 years, Minnesota won 13 games and 14 games respectively, which, for the football history buffs out there, was Kirk Cousins piloting that 13-win season and Sam Darnold leading that magical 14-win campaign. O'Connell made it clear that getting back to that level of quarterback consistency, having the position be a driving force behind winning football games rather than a constant question mark, is exactly the standard he wants this team chasing again. And honestly, that take makes a lot of sense. Every time a team changes quarterbacks, it changes the entire dynamic of the offense. Pass protection shifts because every quarterback moves and manipulates the pocket differently. Receivers have to adjust because every quarterback has a different release, a different feel, different timing on where guys like to catch the football. Consistency at the position isn't just a nice to have, it fundamentally changes how an entire offense functions. Dan Patrick, never one to let a coach off easy, playfully called out O'Connell for leaning heavily on cliches and rehearsed sound bites during the interview, and honestly, that's a fair jab. But here's the thing. There's a real difference between a coach who talks in circles and says absolutely nothing and a coach who stays relentlessly positive while still managing to say something real underneath it all. O'Connell tends to fall into that second category. You walk away from listening to him feeling genuinely good, and it's only later that you realize he never actually tipped his hand on anything specific. That's a skill in itself, whether you love it or find it slightly maddening. So where does the quarterback battle actually stand? The belief here remains that Kyler Murray still has the edge to win the job outright, even if this turns into a legitimately competitive camp battle against J.J. McCarthy. And just to throw one more log onto this fire, analytics guru Warren Sharp released a ranking measuring the best accuracy on passes thrown into the end zone during the 2025 season using a minimum threshold of 20 end zone targets. Joe Burrow topped the list at number 1, followed by Joe Flacco at number 2 for reasons that remain slightly mysterious, and Aaron Rodgers checking in at number 3. As for the Vikings' own quarterbacks, Sam Darnold landed at number 13, while J.J. McCarthy checked in all the way down at number 30, with Bryce Young sitting just ahead of him at 29 and Justin Fields down at 28. Kyler Murray, for what it's worth, didn't have enough qualifying end zone targets to even make the list. Now, do these particular rankings deserve to be treated as gospel? Not necessarily. Plenty of room to debate the methodology here. But it's still one more data point feeding into an already fascinating quarterback conversation heading into camp. A newcomer who could quietly change the offense away from the quarterback drama. There's a name flying under the radar that deserves way more attention than it's currently getting. Jauan Jennings. According to Alec Lewis of The Athletic via Sleeper NFL, Jennings is being pegged as a Vikings newcomer worth watching closely this season. His skill set brings a rugged, physical receiving option to the table, the kind of player who can genuinely dictate matchups depending on the personnel grouping Minnesota rolls out. Here's why this actually matters strategically. When the Vikings deploy their bread and butter 11 personnel package, 1 running back, 1 tight end, 3 receivers. Opposing defenses already have to account for Justin Jefferson, which is a nightmare on its own. But if Jennings is lined up in the slot, Minnesota effectively gets the production of an extra tight end without sacrificing a receiver spot, because Jennings' blocking ability is genuinely comparable to some actual tight ends around the league. That versatility shows up especially in the run game and inside the red zone. Picture this look. Jefferson, Naylor, and Jennings all out on the field together in that 11 personnel set, forcing defenses into light boxes and nickel packages, and suddenly Minnesota can just pound the football against a lighter, more spread-out defensive front. That is a legitimately exciting wrinkle for this offense, and it's exactly the kind of matchup nightmare that could make Jauan Jennings a household name in Minnesota by season's end. Jordan Addison is quietly sending a message, let's shift over to Jordan Addison, because he's been noticeably active on social media lately, and the timing feels like more than a coincidence. With his 5th-year option already exercised and a long-term contract conversation looming on the horizon, Addison appears to be using his platform to remind everyone exactly what he's capable of, posting content showing off his training, his work ethic, and the sweat equity he's putting in this offseason. Among the posts making the rounds, Addison flexed a piece of hardware from his college days, the Biletnikoff Award, given annually to the best wide receiver in all of college football. Addison won that trophy back in 2021 while playing alongside quarterback Kenny Pickett at Pitt, and let's just say that season was an absolute masterpiece. As a true sophomore, just 19 years old at the time, Addison exploded for 100 catches, well over 1,000 yards, and 17 touchdowns in the ACC. That kind of dominant, record-setting season is exactly what helped turn Kenny Pickett into a first-round Javon Hargrave. No, wait, we're talking about Jalen Redmond, and this man is getting robbed blind by the national media. ESPN recently polled executives, coaches, and scouts across the league to rank the top 10 defensive tackles in the NFL. Redmond didn't just miss the top 10. He didn't even receive an honorable mention. Not a single vote. Zero. That is genuinely absurd when you look at the numbers. Last season, Redmond played 793 total snaps across 17 games, which works out to roughly 3/4 of Minnesota's total defensive snaps, proving he's not some situational specialist, but a true every-down interior lineman. He racked up 62 tackles, 12 tackles for loss, which was second on the entire team, 35 total pressures, 6 sacks, good for fourth best on the roster, 5 passes defended, and 2 fumble recoveries. On top of all that, Pro Football Focus graded him at 72.7, ranking him third among all interior defensive linemen in the league. That is a genuinely dominant, complete season, especially when you consider that Brian Flores' defensive scheme doesn't always prioritize pure pass rush numbers from its interior linemen, focusing instead on absorbing blockers and controlling gaps. Redmond managed to do both, holding up against the run while still generating real pressure on the quarterback. And here's the kicker. Redmond is currently playing on an exclusive rights free agent contract, meaning he's earning close to the league minimum for the level of production he's putting on tape. This man has more than earned a real market value extension. And if he builds on last season's breakout performance in 2026, do not be surprised if Jalen Redmond is a legitimate top 3 interior defensive lineman in the entire NFL by this time next year. Legends reuniting and a question every true fan has pondered finally. Let's end on something heartwarming. Vikings legend Chuck Foreman was spotted hanging out with a couple of absolute icons this week, Jim McMahon and Adrian Peterson. Peterson has been making the rounds more frequently lately, especially with his recent induction into the Vikings Ring of Honor, and it's always a treat seeing him reconnect with the franchise. But Jim McMahon deserves a special shout-out here. If you've ever met the man, you know he is exactly who he appears to be in the media, unapologetically himself, genuinely hilarious, and beloved wherever he goes. He's dealt with some real health struggles in recent years, so it's a relief seeing him out enjoying life and clearly doing better. And here's a testament to just how likable Jim McMahon truly is. He barely played for the Vikings, spending only a brief stint in Minnesota. Yet he went on to win a Super Bowl as the starting quarterback for the legendary 1985 Chicago Bears, and later won another Super Bowl as a backup with the Green Bay Packers behind Brett Favre. Despite winning championships with 2 of Minnesota's biggest rivals, Vikings fans still adore the guy. That right there is the true measure of a beloved personality in this league. It does raise a fun hypothetical for the fan base, though. Imagine there's a big Vikings alumni gathering open to fans. Do you show up head to toe in full Vikings gear, purple and gold from head to toe, proudly repping the team? Or do you try to play it cool and keep things low-key? Genuinely tough call, and honestly, either approach works. Wrapping it all up, so there you have it. Vikings Nation, 22 days and counting until training camp officially opens, and this offseason just refuses to slow down. We've got a franchise legend getting his flowers, an offensive line quietly building into one of the best units in football, a superstar tackle putting in extra work under the cover of darkness, a head coach honing his golf game while somehow still saying nothing and everything at once about the quarterback battle, a hidden gem on the defensive line who deserves way more national respect, a newcomer who could unlock a brand new offensive wrinkle, a wide receiver quietly campaigning for a new contract, and Vikings legends reuniting like old times. This is why nobody does an offseason quite like Minnesota. So here's what we want to know. Are you fully on board with committing to the run game behind this offensive line? Does Jalen Redmond deserve to be in the national defensive tackle conversation? And be honest, would you show up to a Vikings alumni event in full purple and gold, or would you try to play it cool? Sound off in the comments. We read every single one. If you enjoyed this breakdown, smash that like button. It genuinely helps this channel grow and reach more of Vikings Nation. Drop a comment with what storyline you want us digging into next, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button right now, because we're covering every twist and turn of this Vikings offseason, all the way through training camp and into the regular season. Trust us, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Thanks for hanging out with us today, Vikings Nation. Skol, and we'll catch you in the next one.